Hi, everyone, and welcome to Voices the Daytime. I'm your host, Tami Goveia, and in studio today, Mr. Vincent Irizarry. So he swaggered onto the daytime scene in the early 80s, and since then has been a very near and dear staple to daytime family. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. How you doing?
All good?
Yes, all good. Thanks for having me,
Relaxed a little
Tammy.
bit?
Yes, relaxed. She knows I was rushing here to get here on time. Was a few minutes late. Traffic in Los Angeles sometimes is a deterrent from
Always.
accomplishing those goals. So,
I'm just so thankful. We were talking about this just before the show started of being
yeah,
able to be in person.
absolutely. This is a
Yeah,
big difference
yeah,
from being on Zoom. And, even though it's a lot easier, you don't have to deal with traffic. That's one thing. But it's nice to be in an intimate setting with a person, being able to communicate. So, yes, well, thank you for having me
oh,
here.
you're very
Mm,
welcome. As we were talking to some fans, we posted that little reel. If you have
Sure.
questions, and which we'll get to, later on,
Yeah.
uh, there are just so many memories that people have of you. It's like a favorite song.
Yeah.
You're the different characters,
Sure.
epic characters that you've played
Yeah.
on daytime. It's like, oh, I remember I was there, or I
Uh,
was this old, or I was watching it with so and this is what it
true.
means to me. And it always staggers me how influential the daytime drama continues to be.
Absolutely, without question. It is, for me, it was an introduction to working in television. My first TV role ever was Lou Jack. Prior to that, I'd done 5, 6 years of theater in Boston and in New York. And when I got introduced to that world, it changed everything for me at that time. Especially considering that Lou Jack, the first role I ever did on TV, was only supposed to be for 3 days. But it really became foundational in building my career. That character in and of itself, and it took some getting used to living in New York City and being listed in the phone book. That there was a time when there was a thing called the white pages. There was a phone book, and my phone number was listed. And when I first got on Guiding Light and the character exploded, we used to have answering machines. My answering machine, I come home from work every day, and there'd be like 10 messages from all over the country, people calling me, some even from prisons. So I'm serious. It did happen. They were doing that. And all of a sudden, I was getting fan mail. But there were times I was getting 400, 500 a week.
Don't you
And
wish you'd kept the answering machines?
yeah, right. That's
Yeah.
that's. I have some of the recordings on the
Do
answer
you
machine, not
really?
from that, but from other things that were said. I probably have a small little tape somewhere in a box somewhere with some like old recordings of messages that people have left me. But yeah, those were the days, huh? The answering machines, and then it moved to beepers. Beepers are gone.
Yeah, thank goodness.
But it was, getting into that world, and I remember it was very uncomfortable for me. I was kind of withdrawn, a little shy in certain respects when I was walking the streets of New York City, and people would recognize me right away. And I was always very nice with people, but it made me feel a little uncomfortable, like,
Do you ever
or
get used to that?
yeah, I got used to it. I
Okay.
definitely got used to it. But especially when Lujak first came on, he was the antagonist to Beth and Philip, and they were the super couple. And my character was kind of easing myself into that, and people would come up to me on the street and be like, stay away from Beth, stay away. And they'd be like really like expressive about it. I'm going, it's okay. I'll do my best. I'm not writing this story, but then the character turned, and people really loved the Beth and Lou Jack
That's so
pairing,
funny.
and that was great. It was exciting to be a part of that. But it took me some getting used to. And I remember my first Emmys that I ever went to, and I was at the Waldorf Astoria. And I was nominated that year. Was I? No, it was the next year. I was nominated for Lou Jack, and I was a nervous wreck. It was just walking down the red carpet, and there were screaming fans on all sides, screaming my name and everything, and the other actors as well. But it was something that was so uncomfortable for me. I was sitting in my seat during it, and I was like this, like looking down and afraid of drawing any attention to myself. It was kind of funny. It was not something that I had experienced. Doing theater in New York wasn't like that. And there were people living, I was living in a rooming house in Greenwich Village, all right? right in the heart of Greenwich Village
So we're
on
talking
11th Street.
1980.
It was 83. I got cast in 83, 84. I was still living in the rooming house. And people, because they knew my address from the white pages, they would drive up to the front of the building and scream out my name at 3 o'clock in the morning, calling out to me. And it was different. I just was like, this is crazy. And even my first interviews with people on, like, daytime magazines, they'd come to meet me where I live. And I'm like, they need to use the bathroom down the hall and giving them toilet papers because we're sharing a bathroom and a kitchen with 6 other rooms. I bought a condo after that first year. I did in Greenwich Village. It was a step up, but it changed my life. It really did. But I love the medium, and I just reflecting recently about doing the appearances that first year and seeing the fan base and seeing how powerful it was and how committed the fans were to this medium was eye-opening for me. It really was. And even to this day, it's the fans that had been following me for over 40 years now,
I was thinking about
So
that. 40 years.
That's 40 years. It's been 40 years. 1983 is when I first started, November of 83, when I first got cast. November seems to be a good month for me every year. It's my birthday month, but it's that. Other shows I've gotten during that time. And so that was good. It was great.
I mean, I know today when you're on set, the pace is manic.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And when you have folks who aren't familiar, as you said, this was your first TV job, let alone a soap opera, it can be a little overwhelming. So has it changed much? Was it just as manic back then as it is today?
It was I remember getting my first script for the first episode and seeing how many scenes I had and how much material I had that had to be learned like in a couple days to get up there and do it professionally and do a realistic job on it. It was a little daunting at first, but after doing theater for years, I clicked right into it. But I will say that has it changed dramatically. When we first started, we were basically doing one episode a day. That was it. No, it wasn't like a collective of 3 episodes in one day, 3 episodes, another 3 episodes the other day, and then portions of the episodes of the scenes that weren't from those in the next day. So that at the end of a week, you're doing like 8, sometimes 9 episodes. And there are definitely times when I was Dr. Hayward on All My Children. There were days I had 60 pages of dialogue, and there was scenes from 3 or 4 episodes, because it became more cost effective to do if you're in a set and you're in that set for like 3 episodes, they'd like to try and do all the scenes from that. So it became more filmic in that respect, is that it's not continual. It's not like consecutive scenes moving from one scene to the next. It's kind of shot all over the place, where you may do scenes from one episode, but there are scenes that precede that you're not doing for another 2 days. So that's basically like how film is shot. Film is not shot in a consecutive order.
Right.
It's based entirely on the sets and locations of where they are. So it takes some getting used to, and also the rapidity of it is something that's very different from before. You're lucky if you get a second take these days. You really are. They want to move it. I mean, Days was definitely like that. And that was interesting when I first got on that show. And even in the 2 years that I was there, they had changed. Our out time was usually about 7 o'clock at night. And then when they renegotiated the contract with NBC and Sony, they wanted them out by 5. So now we're doing all of that with 2 hours less, because they don't want to be paying overtime to the crew.
The work amount doesn't change.
The work amount doesn't change, but the time does.
Yeah.
So the rapidity again. So you got to be on your toes. You got to know your stuff, and that's okay with me. I mean, that's part of being a professional. That's what they're paying you for, and that's something for me from day one, that I looked up to actors and actresses that I worked with, like Beverly McKinsey and Larry Gates and people like that, and saw that was the level of professionalism that you had to come to work with every single day. So I respect that. And I mean, that's why they pay you those big bucks,
So
not as big as they used to, but big bucks still, but still. So
who else on Guiding took you under their wing?
There were definitely, it was interesting. I'm going to be very honest here. There were some people that were very welcoming with me and very encouraging right from the beginning. Beverly was certainly one of them. And Larry Gates, again, class act. I loved Larry, loved him.
What did you love about him?
He's just a gentle, kind, generous man. And he was just very open. There was no deceit in him. There was no pretense in him. And he was an incredibly talented actor, and he had a storied career working with people like Frank Sinatra and others throughout his life. And even when I left the show and he was sick in the hospital, I sent him some flowers, and that was when you did like a telegram, did that. I sent that to him, and he wrote me this beautiful letter afterwards, and I still have it to this day. And it was just very touching. I think of people like that throughout my career that I've had the privilege of working with that have touched me and moved me, and have remained as having a place in my heart ever since. Really, it's that kind of a thing. And Beverly was certainly one of those people. I loved Beverly. Our son Scott McKenzie, Scott McKenzie. He's a director. He directs a lot on General Hospital, and I was there his first day when he started training on Guiding Light. That she got him that opportunity, and I always used to tease him, saying that I was her favorite son. And he's a sweetheart. He's a good man. So yeah, I loved that I had people like that in this new medium that I was working in, that I could look up to, aspire to be as professional as they were, to elevate my craft as much as I can to be like them. And that was, and I was very fortunate to work with people like Judy Evans.
Yes.
Judy was very welcoming, and we hit it off immediately.
She's so lovely.
She is.
She's just such a lovely woman.
She really is. And I was very fortunate that was my first big love interest on the show, as a super couple, and to have the opportunity to work with her. I can't say that everybody was like that. There were some people that were very standoffish with me and not very welcoming of me when I first got on the show, and even expressed certain resentment towards me because of storyline that I was getting, opportunities that were availing themselves to me, the response of the audience. But that's, unfortunately, there's a jealousy factor sometimes between actors. It's competitive. It's okay to be competitive, but once you turn it into a negative on another person, as if they're doing something to you, that's absurd.
When it becomes personal, and it's not at all.
Not at all. I'm doing my job.
Exactly.
That's it. And
completely out of your hands.
And it's just, that's the kind of thing. So that was a learning experience for me too, to navigate those waters that were sometimes a little rough.
Did you have a tough skin? Or
I did.
Okay.
Of course.
So
I'm a
at
New
least
Yorker.
you walked in with that. Yeah.
I'm a New Yorker.
Yeah.
I mean, and you do theater in front of a live audience. That builds a tough skin as well.
So what is it about theater? Because you said that really helped when it came to at least memorization.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've always been good with memorization. That's never really been an issue for me. I studied classical piano growing up as a kid, and I would read a Chopin waltz or prelude at least, maybe 3, 4, 5 times, and then put it away and not look at it anymore. That I just would remember it. And that was always the case with me with working scripts. I've always been good with memorization. So I'm grateful for that. It's a skill that not everybody has that. And I can tell you there are times that working with people that don't have that, and it could be a little frustrating because you have to go take after take after take, or you're doing a great take and that person screws up their lines, and it's like, oh my gosh, here we go again, this fourth take on this. And then you feel like the take they do by is not your best. And, but there was one thing I did learn working on Guiding Light in the beginning, is that no matter how much material you have for that day, it always gets done. At the end of the day, they close the doors, you walk out of the studio, and it's in the can, and you're working on the next day. That's it. So that took away from me the nervousness, the anxiety, the anxiousness of having so much material. I always felt after a while you get into the groove of it, and you're like, it's going to get done. Just focus, prepare yourself, work opposite the other actors, be present, and do what you have to do. That's it. So
when I look at folks on your level, a caliber of work that you've done. It's just that they are so fine-tuned machines because they've
Yeah.
done this for so long, and they truly do raise the bar.
Without question, without question. I mean, like I mentioned people before about those that I looked up to, and I would say that David Canary was another
I
one
was
like
just
that.
going to ask about AMC.
David Canary is certainly one of those people that I looked up to, and I loved him. He's again, salt of the earth type of human being, absolutely so gracious and so, wonderful, brilliant as an actor,
What did you learn
powerful.
from him?
Well, I could tell you, my first episode I ever worked with him was when I first was hired on All My Children. I was hired for 3 months. It was supposed to be like, All My Children fantasy camp. Go and work for 3 months with the cast that I've known about or known for years. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I went there to live for 3 months. And my first day working with David, um, it was it was literally I worked with scenes of two shows at least with him, but he was playing the dual characters of Adam and I can't remember the name of
His
it.
twin.
His twin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm flaking on that right now. And it was like a master class watching him. They had the stand-in for him when he was Adam, and then the stand-in when he was the other character. And I'm watching him do these scenes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's just totally transformed himself right before my eyes. 100% committed into what he was doing. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. We were shot for like 5 hours, those scenes, because they were complicated doing both sides of this. That was crazy, crazy. And I walked away, I go, wow, wow. And he never let up, It was very sad towards the end with him, because this is a guy that was the consummate professional that could have, 50 pages of two different characters that day. And he never went up on his lines. He was always there, very sharp, right in there, focused. And because of the Alzheimer's that started to come in, the onset of that, you started noticing that he would lose himself and forget what scene he was in and start saying lines sometimes from two scenes prior that we already did. And the hardest part for me, seeing that with him, of how painful it was for him to be in that position. He was angry with himself. He'd get angry with himself. And I never saw David get angry when working. But he wasn't angry with anybody else. He was angry with himself, and he had no control over this. And that was really hard to see for such a brilliant actor, a wonderful human being, and to see him struggling with this. I've been around others that have suffered from Alzheimer's. I was actually volunteering years ago at a senior home, going there and reading to people that were struggling with Alzheimer's and seeing them firsthand and experiencing them and them not remembering me from 3 days before, and then but still being present and happy to be doing this and me reading to them. And but David, that was really sad, and it was a great loss to see him, because he died in his mid-70s. He wasn't very old, and it happened fast. But that was another one. What a privilege to have worked with a man like that.
When I look back at the cast, because All My Children,
Stuart, that was the name.
Stuart, there you go.
I'm sorry.
I was going through the
Sometimes that's
alphabet.
where my brain works these days. I lapse. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I grew up watching General Hospital and then All My Children.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started, when I was in high school, and I decided, I think I want to do acting. But I was in San Francisco, and I thought, I want Katie McLean's life. I want to be 18, 19, living in New York and working on a soap opera, right?
Sure.
And
well, you could be standing for her. You can look like her. I can see it.
Well, I will take that. Thank you very much. And the caliber of folks on that show Obviously, besides David, there's Susan and,
Susan,
and Marge
yeah, Marge
that you
Say
worked
was
with
fantastic.
on Guiding.
Guiding Light, that she was a replacement for Beverly.
Yes.
And she was a brilliant, brilliant
I
actress.
wanted to
Loved
ask you
her.
about her.
I just, Marge, I mean, I shared this before, but I'll do it quickly. I remember when she auditioned for All My Children, and Judy Wilson. Every time when somebody was auditioning for a character that was going to play, heavily opposite me, I would go to Judy after the auditions and ask, what she thought of the people, and she would oftentimes let me even see their auditions on tape if
Nice.
they screen test. And
Yeah.
I tested. I would go into a room, sit down, put the VHS in, and watch. And she was fantastic. I knew her work, and I remember saying to Judy after, as I say, there's no question, she's the one. And she said, "Yeah, we love her." And I said, she played my mother on Guiding Light too. She replaced Beverly. She goes, "Oh, I don't know if they're going to want that." And I'm like, "Why not? She's the best one for the role." And daytime is like one big repertory company. I mean, we all worked with each other in different capacities as actors, different storylines, and I said, I hope that's not going to be a deterrent from her. She's the best one for the role. And she says, no, I can't imagine that. But she said, I'm going to have to let them know. But they were fine with it. She was fantastic. She was brilliant as Vanessa. She was freaking crazy. She was crazy. I loved it. I loved working opposite her because you never knew what was going to happen. And she
No,
had
with
these
either one of you.
little like reactions that she'd have these little chortles in her, and when she was like laughing and like nervous, as the character. She was brilliant, and working with people like James Mitchell was fantastic. And Susan Lucci, obviously, she's another consummate professional. And working with like Debbie Morgan and Darnell Williams, I love them both. I love them both, and I feel so fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with so many fantastic actors in this medium. So many that I'm inspired by them, and I hope at times that they may have seen something I do that they feel inspired by me. That's what we work. It's collective. We're working off of each other and opposite each other. It's a beautiful thing.
How are you different from Vincent on Guiding personally and as an actor to All My Children?
Hmm, that's a good question. I would say when I first started on Guiding Light, I was very much immersed into the whole method style of acting. And when Luja came in, I was constantly living in New York City, walking the streets of New York, thinking in the mindset of Lujak. I was like, I tried to just constantly be in that mindset, to think about him on a regular basis, to be there as him. And I feel like where Lujak was concerned, of all the characters I've ever done, I identified it with him more than any other character. He was so much closer to me, to me personally, and um, it was literally about 6 months into it where I was like, okay, I gotta start thinking like Vincent again because I felt like I was losing myself in
Easily.
it. And I love doing that, and I felt like that to some degree even with David Hayward when I first started. You always try to find that life within you when you're creating the character that's personal to you, that nobody else would do because it's not you're not them, but to make it as personal as possible for yourself. And I feel that over the years that, yeah, I still do that, obviously. But it really does depend on, this medium is the kind that you get a beginning and then you get a very long middle. You hope that it goes on for years. That's the kind of thing that's very interesting because you have to create that character and you're constantly surprised by new additions that the writers bring in, that all of a sudden you find out you had a brother you never heard of. It's like you have to replace some kind of like a microchip in your head, in your
Yeah.
brain, and say, oh, that's a brother that I never had. And that was something, and find out why that happened. Um, I guess I've just obviously matured, and I've really feel very comfortable in the medium more than I did when I first started. It took some time, getting my sea legs. That's just reality, like in anything. But I would say it's interesting too because I've had the opportunity to work in film. I've had the opportunity to work in TV, in theater, and they're all very different disciplines. Every single one of them are very different. Working in theater, it's like you're doing the performance. You have a beginning, middle, and an end every show, but it's alive. It's a living art form. And with the audience at the end of it, you feel like you've gone through something with them that's personal, that the next day it's a totally different audience and your performance is not going to be exactly the same. Nobody's is. And it's very different, you know? And I love that. I remember, though, when I first started in daytime, it was a little strange because, as I said, it was the first camera work I'd ever done. That after every scene, it's dead quiet, and you go like, "Okay, next, move
No
on."
feedback.
No, but no feedback,
Move on.
nothing. But you get it when you go to the personal appearances. Then you're seeing the impact that the story had, the characters had, um, and that was an eye-opening experience to me as well. To see that, to see what kind of fan base is there and how it is really affecting them. I would say the time that it really had the most impact was after 9/11 for me, because I was on set with Finola. We were shooting our first date scenes as the characters, as David and Anna, and everything was unfolding while we were there on set, on the monitors all around that the whole crew was watching. With the first plane crashing, hitting, and then the second one, and that one in the close-up where you saw that it was a jetliner. And the entire mood obviously changed. And the director, Casey, he tried to get us with the producer to keep going. But Finola and I were like looking at each other, what are we doing? This is strange. Prior to that, it was our first date, so it was fun and flirtatious and playful. We were in my dressing room working on it. We're like, well, these are going to be fun scenes. We did it up there, and we're like, oh, these don't feel fun anymore. There was like nothing
Yeah.
about it. And we finally, after the first tower fell, which was traumatic on every level, it changed everything. There was an extra on the set, a woman who dropped her son off at a daycare just 2 blocks away from there. She lost it. Eden Regal's brother lived down there, right across from the Twin Towers, and she was worried that was possibly taking the subway to go to work that morning. So she was an emotional mess. They called us onto the set, everybody, the whole crew, and it was announced that the crew was going to be taken by ABC for the news division, and that we were going to stop filming. And I remember Nadine Aronson. We all got into a circle, and she said a prayer. We all held hands, and we said a prayer. But I would say that it was interesting for me, back to the impact that this medium has. When we did come back 2 days, 3 days later to film again, it wasn't the same. We tried, we did what we could to make it fun. There was such a heaviness in our hearts, obviously, with what was happening. But I felt a sense of futility in a way as being an actor. And does this have any meaning right now? Does this have any meaning for anybody? This play acting thing that we're doing right now. And that was sort of for me a crisis in my personal career choice of what am I doing right now? Should I be doing something more substantive, more significant? And after several weeks, to start getting letters from people and saying how important it was for them, that they had this to hold on to during this traumatic period as we had collectively as a nation. That changed for me. I realized that there was importance, that people needed the familiarity of something that they looked forward to, that they invested their time and their enjoyment in. And it gave me a different sense of purpose, frankly.
I'm
It
so
really
glad
did.
you arrived at that point because, I
Yeah.
think as creatives, we do second guess how important
Mm-hmm.
is it really in the big
Yeah,
scheme of things. However, art is what saves civilizations
it
on
does.
so many different levels.
Yeah,
And to have, it's a form of, it's always a reflection of society,
true.
but it's also with the daytime community. There aren't any shows that have been around for 40,
No,
50, 60 years other than
70
daytime.
years guiding light
Yeah.
between radio and television.
And
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And so
yeah,
when a genre is so embedded in the culture,
yeah,
if it goes somewhere, there's a ripple effect. So
yeah,
when we started losing the soap operas,
true.
there was a real moment of
Yeah,
this isn't this isn't healthy. This isn't. I don't think the bigwigs know or understand what they're doing and the ramifications of that.
true.
But going back to what you were saying about realizing that it does make a difference, uh, I'm sure fans, like you said, when you were at the daytime events and meeting them, they instilled in you just how important seeing you and the stories
It did.
escape.
Absolutely. It really did. And
Yeah.
especially after that period, because I would do some appearances, and to hear people who were hospitalized at that time and needing that fix, in the middle of a day, that they felt, gave them a sense of familiarity that they could hold on to, and something that brought joy in their lives. That was important. And it also, I recalled a book I had read as a very young actor in my teens. It was by Artaud, I think it was the name, French uh, director. And I remember in the beginning of the book, it was in the prologue, if I remember, preface of it, he talked about how he was in World War One in the, during in the trenches as an actor, and with watching the horrors all around him. And when people asked him what he was doing when he wasn't there as a soldier, he felt that sense of, like, it was shallow futility to say, well, I'm an actor, and how it impacted him that he was experiencing life in this regard, that on such a dark level. It felt so shallow to him to have to say that to people. But afterwards, that he understood the value of what it was, and that people, holding a mirror up to society, and then it teaches us something about ourselves. It reminds us something about ourselves as the human enterprise. This is what we experience in life, and that's what art is supposed to be. So he found a pride in what he was doing after those experiences. So, you know, it's life.
I'm a huge classic film enthusiast and an
Yeah,
advocate for its preservation and educating people on classic film and
yeah,
why it's important. And I think it's one of the reasons I love daytime so much
yeah,
is because it reminds me of classic film. Generation to generation, you can pass these, well, celluloid, but digital experiences on to your kids and grandkids,
sure,
and there's just a shared,
yeah,
there's a collective experience.
absolutely.
That's why
I
going to
agree.
the movies is so important. Get out of
Yeah,
the home
yeah,
and
yeah,
go to the movies, because having that collective experience
yeah.
is a nurturing energy for the community.
Very true. And I have so many wonderful memories as a kid growing up and watching these movies that I still to this day look at and say how brilliant they were, with my brother, or my family going to a drive-in and going to see The Godfather for the first time, or my brother Frankie. I remember him sharing with me after watching It's a Wonderful Life for the first time, and I hadn't seen it, and he was telling me about the storyline. I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. So I got to see it when it finally came back on TV. This was before VHS. I was very young. And I loved it. And to this day, that movie, I'm not exaggerating. Even to this day, it just happened 2 years ago. My sister's out in Atlanta. We were watching for Christmas, and I'm crying. I cry at the same exact places every single time. The most embarrassing one was when I was flying on Christmas Day to come back to work on Young and the Restless. I was living in New Jersey, and we were filming the next day, and I had to fly back from there. I think it was during a strike or something was happening, so we were filming the day after Christmas. And I'm on the plane, and they're playing It's a Wonderful Life on the plane, and I'm in the aisle seat, and I'm sobbing, and I'm like, keep my head down and put my
And
head
you've
down.
seen the movie a
I've seen
million
it a million times.
times.
It's the same. It's like a trigger. Certain things that happen in that movie. It's like when he's a little boy and he stops the pharmacist from giving the poison. You get to give the poison in the medicine that's going to kill the person. And the guy slaps him because he's like thinks he's doing something wrong, and then he realizes he saved his life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, just sobbing, sobbing. There are certain triggers in that movie that I'm like, to this day, I've seen it 40 times. It doesn't matter how many times I've seen it. I'm going to cry at the same
Yeah,
places every
because
time.
it triggers something personal for you,
Yeah,
for
very
Vincent,
much so.
over and
And the
over
whole
again.
community coming in at the end to save him after
Yeah.
everything he's done, and I'm crying, sobbing, and I'm like, I hope people aren't seeing me. I'm literally like, covering my face. I'm like, what? So I know it's kind of funny.
I was watching. Okay, let's see. Which way do I want to go? I want to talk about Heartbreak Ridge,
Okay.
but when it comes to film and what influenced you as a child or older, I was watching your episode with Ken Schreiner and
Oh
Marcus.
yeah. Yeah.
Dos taquitos.
Dos taquitos. Yeah.
Yes.
Adios, dos taquitos. That was
I
my
was
line. Threw that in there.
laughing
I
out
did that.
loud.
Yeah. And then my twin brother Frank, who dies. And it just that was funny. I loved doing it with them. We had the best time, and we shot them very fast. I
Yeah.
mean, the first episode we were supposed to do it in a car wash, but something had changed. So they said no, meet us on the top of this rooftop of a parking structure outside the mall in Sherman Oaks. I'm like, okay. We got there. We staged it quickly. We shot it like because Marcus had to go pick up his daughter from school, so we were like literally shot it like in one take, and he just decided just to hold the camera like this, moving it back and forth. So that's why that one is like that. We did it basically in one take, and just riffed with it. The second one that we shot, I love this place, Cornell Winery. It's up in the hills. It's by the old place. It's an old steakhouse. It's been there since the 70s. It's a cabin in the woods up in the hills, Mulholland Highway, above Agora, between Agora and Malibu, and it's a great location. It's just great. So I suggested that to them. They loved it. We shot that there. I threw in the Dos Taquitos at the end, and it was my idea to bring the poison
The flask.
flask
Yes,
that my
yes.
friend Rachel gave me
Always
as
love
a.
a good flask.
She gave me that as a gift. Rachel Anderson, hello Rachel. She gave it to me as a gift many years ago because of the Libido Zone storyline that I did on All
Yes.
My Children. So I brought that as a prop, and we put that into the story, and it worked out great. So wait, did that say poison? At the end, Marcus said when I put it down, said adios dos taquitos, and left it from the drinking. The other thing, the last one, that was really fun, but because they got there earlier, they told me to come at a certain time. It was a miscommunication. When I got there, it was a real restaurant, and they were like pushing the limits of them being there with the restaurant in operation. So when I got there, they had already shot their sides, okay? And they didn't know what I was going to do. I said, okay, let me go change real quick. I went into the bathroom, changed my hair, put the thing on, put my glasses on, the whole thing, and the bow tie came out. And it just was a great, fun character to do. We did it in one take. And after it was like, we're happy with it. Are you good? I'm like, yeah, let's just go. So we were like done. We moved it really quick. It was fun. I love playing and different things of playing characters like that. It's a blast.
Well,
It's a
one of the
blast.
segments, Marcus, it's script. I don't know if it's scripted. Like you said, a lot of it's
A little
off,
bit. It's
off
loosely
the cuff.
scripted. It
Yeah.
is loosely scripted.
He says
Definitely.
to your character, "Did you ask yourself why you're an actor? Like why you're
Yeah.
acting, and why do you do this?
Yeah.
Who influenced you?" And you said Paul
Paul
Newman.
Newman. Yeah.
And I wasn't sure, was that a scripted thing? Is that Vincent?
It was there was he asked the question, and he said, "Is there an actor or somebody?" This was off camera, and I said, "I'd say Paul Newman is probably one." And he said, "Okay, great, let's go with that." And that's basically what we did. We did it like that, and it was just even the Frank one that was fun because in the moment with him playing the his evil twin, and me. And he comes in, it's like putting the sugar in there, and it was totally my thing. Where I was like very attracted to him. I was like, oh, don't stop there, keep going, whatever. And he's like putting all this in. He went with it and just like poured it. Okay, stop, that's it. And then it's like poison. But it was fun. I loved it. I had a great time working with Ken and with him. And even there are moments in there to see their reaction to what I said. I can't remember. There was the place that in Kansas, I can't even remember the name of it, and Ken's reaction is like trying to say it. He can't even say it. Keokuk. And to see how he said it, every time I see it, I laugh at how his reaction is to that. It's very funny. That's fun. I mean, that's, it's an
I would
actor
love to see them do more of that.
I would too. I think it's a great idea.
It's
I
such
think
a
it's a
great idea, and
wonderful
they're
idea.
magic.
It should, and they've had excellent actors on it too. You
Mhm.
know, you had John Lindstrom doing stuff on there, and he did great. So many people did wonderful episodes on it. But we're just ripping them out. They're very quick, and just fun, Well, daytime should definitely prepare you to be able to do something like that on the
Absolutely.
cuff.
A little
So,
improvisation
sure,
when need
definitely.
be.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Have to talk about your experience with Mr. Eastwood.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I know, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I've always, from what I've experienced and been told, there's a huge generosity to him. And I
Yes,
wasn't sure if that was what you experienced as
without
well.
question,
Oh,
without
fabulous.
question. The interesting thing about working with Clint is that you realize this immediately when you've worked with him, that he hired you to do the job because he knew that you were capable to do it. So it's not like his form of directing is pretty much you do what you do. Let me see what you do in a rehearsal, and I'll set the cameras up around that. And we learned that the first day that we had a scene as a group, because we were a little ensemble, all of us in the platoon. He we went over to Clint. It was me and Mario and Tom Villard, all of us. Pete Koch, who played Sweet. We went up to Clint and we said, "So Clint, what would you like us to do here?" And he was like, "Go over there and do something." And we're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, go over there and do something." So we went over there. We did it. We staged it, and then he came over like 10 minutes later, saw what we did, and he's like, "Okay, put the camera here, put the camera there," and that's what we did. Then from the rest of the shoot, we would work things out ourselves, show it to him. If he liked it, he liked it. If he didn't, it's okay. Let's try this instead. Um, and Clint is another one. I mean, daytime definitely helped me work with him because of the rapidity of his style of filmmaking. He does one take, two takes if you're lucky. Forget a third take. That's not happening. Even Jack Green, who's the DP on it, he wanted to do when we were in the island of Vieques. He wanted a third take, and Clint was like, "Well, what is the problem?" And he said, "Well, he's like, it's just the lighting." Goes, "Oh, fix it in the soup. We're moving on." It was like, that's it. And we were a week under schedule. We finished that. It was supposed to be an 8-week shoot. We've done in 7 weeks, and that was him. That's the way he shoots. But I love his style of filmmaking. He's more akin to like a European style of filmmaking. His his style is a little more rough hewn than a lot of Hollywood productions. They're not overly produced, overly lit. I appreciate that, using natural light a little bit more than others do and other filmmakers. And I think it's great. It's worked really well for him. I mean, I loved Play Misty for me. That was his
Yeah.
first directorial effort, and the people that work with him, his crew, are so loyal to
Mm.
him. There are people that are probably working with him today that worked on Play Misty for me. I mean, when I was working with him in '86, Play Misty for me was early '70s, maybe, if I remember correctly. There were people that worked on that set that were working in every movie that he had done since then. And they were like, the minute Clint calls, if I'm about to do something else, that's gone. I'm going to Clint. And that just really sort of is a testament to him as a person. He's respectful of the people on set. He's so gracious. We could have like 30 extras in a scene, and after lunch, he's walking around asking everybody, all the extras, how was the food? Everything good?
Well, speaking of
Yeah.
which, I got my side card because of him.
Really?
Yeah, I was
Oh,
doing
wow.
extra work on American Sniper, and he
Yeah.
gave me a line.
Oh,
He didn't
wow.
tell anyone that he had done this. So when I said something, the AD came up to me. What? Did you just say something?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Who told you, Mr. Eastwood? And so it was a whole
Oh,
like talk
wow.
about just that moment where
Yeah.
everything is just kind of golden light.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's what I'm saying. You had an experience with him too. That's great.
Yeah,
I
and
I, I loved working with Clint.
people were just
I
so
would say the
respectful.
one thing that I regret about working with Clint, and it's all me, I I'm rarely somebody that becomes tongue tied about around an actor or somebody famous celebrity. I've met many of them, and but every time, and I, because of Kelly's Heroes as a kid, I saw that so many times, man. I
It's
loved Kelly's
such a
Heroes. I
fantastic.
loved
Oh
it,
my
and
gosh.
I held him up at such a high place that when I was around him, I always felt like I'd said the wrong thing, or I felt uncomfortable with it myself. It was a funny thing. I don't get like that very often. I've met a lot of people throughout my career, and never did I feel that way before, but with Clint. So that's my own regret, that at times I felt like, I just got to like relax. It's okay. And he was wonderful. It was one time he came out to the bar with us on Vieques. It was an open bar on this island, not very heavily populated. The island itself is like 2/3 owned by the military, and the inhabitants live in the middle. But we all went to this bar one night, and he came and he had drinks with us, and we convinced him. We talked him into doing his famous speech from "You Feel Lucky, Punk." And he did. He did the whole thing. He
Oh,
did the
that's
whole thing. We were just like,
fantastic.
"Oh man, this is
Oh,
freaking awesome!
that's
This is
surreal.
awesome!" And the other thing though, the movie when it first was edited, it was like 3 hours long. And that's not the kind of movie you're going to put in the theaters for 3 hours. It did go to 2 hours and 10 minutes, if I remember correctly. But there was one scene that I wish they didn't have to cut out. It was really a fun scene. Um, we were in basic training as rappelling from a tower, and my character, Forgetty, who he called Faghetti, my character, I'm rappelling down, and the harness grabs my crotch really hard, and I'm like hanging up there, and
So there's
screaming.
no stunt person. You
No, it
did
was me
that.
doing it, and I'm like screaming, let me down, motherfucker," and I'm like, let me down. I get down, I fall on my knees, I'm like holding my crotch, and Clint walks up from behind me and goes, "Better be careful, Faghetti. You're gonna break the heart in every sailor of Myrtle Beach." That was like, that's never going to be seen, unfortunately. It was a really fun little moment. He's just standing over me looking at, "Better be careful, Faghetti." Um, yeah, I loved working with him though. He was fantastic. He's a brilliant filmmaker,
Yeah,
really is.
yeah.
So
One for the ages,
yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. Yeah.
We have to touch on Days of Our Lives.
Okay.
Uh, and I go back to Lou Jack, and then when you were on All My Children, David, two very different characters. Lou Jack was never considered
Very
a
much.
villain, and you know
Mm-hmm.
Dr. David is
Yeah, Lou
absolutely,
Jack was more like an anti-hero, I
yeah,
guess you would consider.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then Deimos, he had his dark side,
Very dark
to say the
side,
least.
but he
But
was
I would love,
romantic as well.
sure, I would
Yeah.
love to hear your experience with John Aniston.
John, again, one of those people that I feel so blessed, so fortunate, privileged to have had the opportunity to work with. It was 2 years I got to work with John, and he was a joy every day. Again, consummate professional. I was very fortunate to have my first scenes on the show with him because he was very welcoming and just allowed me to just be there with him, present with him. Again, no pretense or anything like that. He just was there to do the work, do the best he could do with me, and that really was great because what it does when you work with somebody like that, especially right when you're first starting a role, it creates the foundation for where you launch from. Um, it's not always the case. Sometimes you work on a set with somebody that's like the star of the show or something. It could be a nighttime show, and then not very welcoming. So you got to rely entirely on your craft, to be able to do the
Because
work.
you can't rely on their response per
Yeah,
se.
and just that they're just kind of a little dismissive or just ignoring you that you're there, even though you might be a guest star. Just it happens. It happens. I know that other actors that have gone through this, they've had those experiences, and then there are others that you work on a set and they're fantastic. They're welcoming, and I always felt this. I do feel there's a trickle down effect from the star of a show, especially in a nighttime show. It's a trickle down effect where the entire crew they reflect the grace, the graciousness of the lead actor, the professionalism of the lead actor. It really does. I've worked with others that are not like that, and they're just cranky, grumpy, snapping at people, and the crew is snapping at people. Everybody's like that. I would say the opposite of that was working on Murder She Wrote, with Angela Lansbury. She was the consummate professional, and I loved working with her. I went to the set hours earlier to see her film her closing monologue. At the
Hmm.
end of every episode, she
Hmm.
has like that 4 or 5 page monologue of tying it all together, why this person is the
I
murderer.
love that.
And I wanted to see how she did that and see what it was like. And she does that first scenes in the morning. So I got up early, got there at like 8 in the morning to sit off camera and watch her. One take, every camera shot. One take, every camera shot. She was brilliant, wonderful. And that was the 8th year that show was on. And the crew, that was one of the best crews I've ever worked in a nighttime show because of her. She respected the people there. She appreciated what they were doing to keep that show a success. And it was obvious by her professionalism. And I love that. I love that. That's what it should be. Unfortunately, it's not always the case. So,
We would love to see, a few of your characters have been killed off on different shows. But Days, more than anything,
yeah.
They often bring people back from the dead.
Yeah.
They have the science to do that
They certainly do. In that world, it's like it's happened, and they've done that a lot on Days.
Yes.
I love Deimos. I thought he was a great character. I mean, it seemed like the audience was loving him too. It had
Absolutely.
definitely added something to it, Yeah, I don't know. It is what it is, and I loved playing the character from day one, and had the opportunity to work with great actors on that show too. So who knows? It would be nice. It'd be nice to go back on one of these shows again.
We'll
It'd be
have to
great.
get a fan petition going.
Go for it, honey.
Go
Yeah,
for it.
why not? Why not? He's a great character.
So we do have some fan questions
Okay.
that people have written in.
Go ahead.
Kenneth Clark, 2013. So when he found out that we were going to be chatting, he's like, "Oh my gosh, Tami, so awesome. My question for Vincent is, I have been a fan ever since he played my favorite villain, David Hayward, on All My Children. Do you have a favorite David moment?"
Wow.
That's
There's
tough,
several.
really.
There's several. I would say absolutely the Libido Zone storyline was fantastic. That was a lot of fun. I mean, and that scene with me dropping the flask on the yacht at a party, for those that don't know, the storyline was basically I brought a flask with this Libido Zone that removes all your inhibitions, okay? And I brought it onto the yacht. It was a party. Everybody from Pine Valley was there. I wanted to pour it into a drink that Tad Martin, Michael Knight, was drinking, because I had set up a woman to lure him into a room and then have him, obviously getting sexually active with her, and then have Dixie walk in and catch him. That was the plan. But as I was about to pour it into his drink, a server came walking by and hit my elbow, and the whole flask fell into the punch bowl that was for everybody that was there. So everybody's drinking from this punch bowl, and at the end of the episode, I'm standing there looking, and everybody's like, "Drink up, Pine Valley." And the next few days, everything went insane, and it literally brought out certain elements of every actor, which was really quite exciting to see as an acting exercise, that you had all of these people, all these actors finding this, that these inhibitions totally removed. How do they respond? And, one character might become much more aggressive, whereas somebody like Opal she's so hungry. She was eating crumbs off the floor, and it was really crazy. It was fun to see that, to see people dealing with this overall physical change in their personalities. And I loved it. It was a great storyline, and it went on for a year until it was proven that I did it. And then I was arrested for it and had to stand trial for it. And Dixie didn't want to talk to me because she realized that I was trying to manipulate her and break up her marriage. And, that was David's way.
It was a storyline for the ages.
Yeah, that was one of them. I would say that was definitely one of them. The other that was bringing in Marge Doucet was definitely another one, because that was pivotal in the audience having an understanding of why David was the way that he was. To find out that my father had committed suicide, and that it was because my mother had encouraged him to do so, and that I was outside the room as an 11-year-old boy, and my mother egging him on to shoot himself, and me running in and my father bleeding out in my arms. That, for me, was so important to who David was as a person, because I believe from that moment on, once he became a cardiologist, every time he was saving somebody's life, he was bringing his father back. He was fighting death on a regular basis to bring back his father. And I love that. Backstory is so important for a character. And if the writers do as wonderful a job as they did with that, or even with Deimos, bringing him in, his father, his brother, his stepbrother. He was the Jon Snow of the family. He was the bastard brother, but his brother setting him up for killing the love of his life at the time, Helena, when it was actually John's character, Victor, that did it. It may have been accidental. They were fighting on a cliff for some reason. Why on a cliff? But she fell off, and then he blamed me. So I went to jail for 30 years for the murder of the woman I was in love with, who I had an affair with. That's why he was angry with her, obviously. Why? I mean, to the point of killing her. I don't know. But anyway, so that's why I came to Salem to seek revenge on him. So that's great backstory, that you could just really sink your teeth into. So those are the ones I would say with all my children. Those were two of the pivotal ones for my character that I loved. It's great.
One other question from Mark_Marcus.
Okay.
Does you, Vincent, remember appearing on The Price is Right with Judy Evans to promote Guiding Light and
Yeah.
the fans screaming?
Yeah, I do. It was fun. I think it may have been my first time in Los Angeles. I think it was. I think it was the first time I flew to Los Angeles. It was 1984, and Lou Jack had really taken off with Beth. It was after we had all our scenes on the beach in Malibu, and Almost Paradise was playing with us, riding this golden palomino on the beach that just appeared like Pegasus. And then they asked, would we like to go do The Price is Right? And I was like, what are we going to do on The Price is Right? Well, you're going to give away some prizes. I said, okay, sure. So they flew us to LA. They put us up at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, which was very exciting. Because I think there was certain people that were living there at the time, actors. Trying to think of some of them, but I can't right now. And I just thought this was exciting. It was me being in Los Angeles for the first time, and I did that, and it was fun. There are people that have shown like those segments from Price is Right on YouTube a few times. Have like posted them, and it's just fun to see. I mean, just me and Judy, it was funny to see us. I'm like riding a motorcycle that they were going to give away if the person picked the right door or whatever. I don't know, but it was funny.
Well, they continue that tradition.
Yeah,
B&B has gone on Price is Right. And
that's right.
it's great that they continue tying in
Yeah.
daytime family with the
true.
show. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Another one, Elizabeth McFadden. I'd love to know if Vincent still hangs with any of the Guiding Light crew back in the 80s. My all-time favorite soap opera.
I don't hang with many of them anymore. Over the years, there were times when I was living on the East Coast, because that's where most of them are. I have gotten together with Krista Tessero several times out here in Los Angeles. She lives here, and we've gotten together, been to her house. I was at her house probably about 8 months ago. I went to her house. She invited me and my girlfriend Yvonne. She did a piano concert with her husband. They have dueling pianos. They're grand pianos.
Did you play?
I didn't play. No, she did. She played. I didn't. No, it was their show. And they had people from the community there. It was a lot of fun. And then she and I went and met her again about a month later in Malibu. We went and had lunch together. And I love Krista. I mean, she's a sweetheart. She's such a sweetheart. Over the years, you run into these people sometimes. I mean, I saw Robert Newman at the Santa Barbara 40th anniversary. Saw him there. It was great to see him. So it's always great. I mean, we all shared in this season of our lives together, doing these shows. And that show was beautiful. I mean, it was great to be a part of that legacy, 70 years between TV and radio. I feel very blessed in that regard. But yeah, and I was living in Montclair, New Jersey years ago, and Michael O'Leary was living there at the time, so I would see him. Justin Dees was living there at the time. I don't know if they still live there. It was many years ago. So, and Kim Zimmer actually was living there.
Amazing.
At the time. I don't know if she does either right now, but yeah, so I would see them on occasion and do things with them. So yeah.
Well, fans are always looking to connect. So where can they find you on the socials?
Oh, well, you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on, X, on Facebook.
All over.
All over, the same old. And I sometimes respond to people. You can't always. I mean, it's just a lot. I'll at least acknowledge, with a heart or something that I liked it. But sometimes I will respond to people. It depends on what's being asked, or if they're just commenting on something, and I just let them know that I saw it. That's all, Yeah. I mean, it's interesting how it's evolved after all these years. When I first started in daytime, there was no social media. There was nothing like that, And honestly, I think that it was to our benefit because once the message boards started happening in the late 1990s, 2000s, and then all of these social media sites started popping up, it could be very difficult for a new actor or a new storyline to take off because people could be so hypercritical before they give a chance for the character to develop, for the story to develop. And I honestly think that if Lou Jack was brought in and now with this, I don't know if the audience would have allowed him to develop as a character and allow the storyline to develop to become what it was that became so cherished at the time by the fans. So, and that's a shame. I feel for young actors. I remember this one actress, I'm not going to say who she was, when she came on All My Children, and I saw her. She'd only been airing for like a week, and I saw her when I came into work, and I said, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Just been reading the message boards, and they're so cruel. They're so vicious to me, and I'm just starting." And I'm like, "Oh, sweetie, don't read the message boards. Don't read them." And I said that just give yourself the freedom to do what you need to do. Let the audience come to know who your character is and what you're going to do. But it's because sometimes people are so cruel, and even just attacking people's physical, you know, state, and like that's something they can control. It's just a strange thing to do. But I honestly, I think that social media, I call it anti-social media oftentimes because it is. I think some people can be very cruel because they're doing it in the privacy of their home. There's no accountability for them, and it brings out the worst in some people. And I would just encourage people to try to find your better angels inside of you. Don't be so harsh on other human beings. Life is hard enough as it is.
It is.
I
Be
liken it to
kind.
this. It's a funny thing. Even before social media, going to see baseball, like a baseball game or something, being in the stands where one of the players strikes out and a person stands up and starts cursing them. And I'm going, how would you feel if you were at work one day and you did something that it wasn't exactly where it should have been, and then you had people screaming in your face, "You're a loser, you're terrible." That's what they do. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I mean, that's part of the game. Nobody's perfect. So anyway, that's it.
Do you have any projects coming up that you can share or?
I did a pilot a while ago. It's called The Boulevard, and actually Jordi Villasuso is in it as well.
Oh, you miss
Some
him
good
on the
people in it,
landscape.
some really good people in it, and it seems like it's a great script. I enjoyed the script a lot. It's a great premise, and I'm wondering what's going on with it because it's in post production, but it's been a while. And I've reached out to the director. One of the producers is not doing it right now, but she has told me that she saw a cut of it recently and it looked great. So hopefully, it's something that they shot the first episode in the hopes of selling it so that they could do the next 6 episodes that they have that they have the scripts written for. So we'll see because it's a really good show. I mean, I like the premise of it, but I haven't seen how it's done. But it certainly has the potential of being something that could be really good. So we'll see.
Keep us posted.
Yeah,
Um,
I will.
Again, we just want to thank you for being here. We
Thank you,
miss your
Tami.
face
Well, thank you,
in
Tami.
the daytime on the daytime canvas and just in
Yeah,
general. So
yeah. Well, thank you. This was fun. I appreciate it, and yeah, it was cool. So here we go. Bye, everyone.
bye everyone. Thank you
Mhm.
for joining Voices of Daytime.